Hello, and welcome to Dedicated Devoted. I'm Jared.
And I'm Cora.
You're Cora?
Yeah, you normally say something else.
I'm Jared, your host.
Yeah, and I'm the co-host, Cora. You threw me off there.
You say, I'm Cora, your co-host.
Your co-host, yeah, but you ruined it, but it's okay.
All right.
We will continue.
I am very excited today to be able to be here with my co-host, and we are going to have some real Christian conversation, and I am very excited about it. I actually think that this is a very important topic that has been brought up several times this week. Mm-hmm. I want to first and foremost say I appreciate you being here as my co-host. I know that you've had a long day. Mm-hmm. Mine has been very simple and very easy. I'm just going to power through. It's all good. But in all seriousness, we have been talking about first, I'm going to go back a little bit. First, we started off with a short devotional regarding surrender.
Yeah.
And so surrender, that concept, we talked about spiritual and biblical surrender. And then we moved into our most recent devotion, which was posted on Monday. And that had to do with what?
The white flag?
No, white flag was last week.
Oh.
That's the surrender part.
Oh, well, you said surrender, so I thought you were talking about something
I know
else.
you totally feel tested.
It's late.
So it's obedience.
Okay,
Do you remember now? Obedience.
Yeah, I remember now. Now that
You remember? Okay.
Yeah, now that you reminded me, I did.
So
do.
I know that was a little bit of a
I shouldn't
test.
say it's late. I have had a long day.
Yes.
It's not you, it's me.
Okay, it's totally fair. So
Yeah.
the reason why we're here today is to help our listeners understand this topic of obedience.
Yeah.
And I'm going to piece this together so we have a little bit more of an idea of what we're aiming for. We talked about biblical and spiritual surrender. That was devotional number 1. Mm-hmm. It was very important at the time that was published because we saw I'm going to call it a railing against God, an uprising in our society. There's a lot of people who just won't surrender to God.
Yeah.
And I talked about how that is going to be one of the most important aspects of really developing a strong, healthy relationship with God. More than anything, I'm gonna say it this way: biblical and spiritual surrender equals true freedom. That's very important. What comes after that biblical and spiritual surrendering? It's obedience.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that because we've had some very interesting conversations. I think you've had independent conversations and I've had independent conversations. And it's important to talk about, what do we mean with obedience? Do we mean blindly following what a certain denomination tells us?
Do as you're told.
As you're told.
Because I told you to.
Yes. I mean, as I am getting these episodes out, by the way, please go to our channel on YouTube. You can find us at Dedicated Devoted, or find us on YouTube. Search Dedicated Devoted, all one word. And you can also go to our website, DedicatedDevoted.com. That's still being built out. But the reason, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. And you're doing like daily devotions on there, right? Or
I'm
weekly?
doing a weekly and then
devotion.
I'm unpacking it on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, they're listening to this on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the idea is, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not something that is going to be super meaty when it comes to that devotional on Mondays.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a 5-minute devotional. You guys should definitely check it out.
Yeah. Just something to give you some inspiration and hopefully hope, I guess, with words.
What I'm trying to do is bring relevant topics to the table. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. I'm going to go back to the formation of Dedicated Devoted. This was something that I teased out as I'm going to call it a passion project over a winter break about 2 years ago. So I had my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, we all sat around a table and we had the opportunity to talk about this very show. And now we're in our 3rd year, which is really cool. But the goal of Dedicated Devoted is to help believers create a dedicated, devoted life to Jesus Christ. That seems a little bit difficult in our modern day and age. And so what I'm doing is putting out those devotionals just to get people primed, and then they can think about it throughout the week and apply it to their lives. And so it is going to be Wednesday for our listeners, and this is an opportunity for us to talk about obedience. This topic of obedience is really important. Cora, are we supposed to do everything that we're told?
I think you kind of grow up feeling like that, right? You're supposed to listen to adults and to those that are above you or older than you. So it seems like that, right?
It's kind of baked into our upbringing.
For sure.
And I don't disagree with that by any means, but we have to ensure that we have a measuring reed or rod and we understand, well, why? Yeah. Why are we doing what we're doing? It's not a bad thing to be inquisitive or questioning. Yeah. It's actually quite healthy.
Yeah, definitely.
As you know, you've been having some very interesting conversations with friends, and I think a lot of us out there have friends and family who have brought these kind of things to our attention. As I've put out I'm going to go back to plugging the channel. As I'm putting these episodes out, what is going to happen is two things will happen. We will have encouragement from the community. That's going to be our listeners, or we're going to have people who are intentionally trying to destroy truth. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you this right now. In my adult saved life, I have dealt with quite a bit of people who do not have a genuine curiosity for the gospel. They are simply out to try to tear down the things that we're sharing right now. Mm-hmm. That makes sense?
Yeah, I was trying to think of the word for it as you were saying it. There's a word for it that they've been using now, and I just can't think of what it is.
Well, as you think of that, the reason why I said go to our channel is because we could definitely use the encouragement, right?
Yeah.
I can use the encouragement on the channel because we're going to have people popping into the feed and talking about things that we believe as Christians, and they are going to be trying to tear down. That's where the first devotional comes in, surrender. There are many people, and I will call those people enemies of God, who really want to try to take that which is right and true, tear it down, and they're doing it for their own edification, for the building up of themselves. So let's talk about obedience, and we're going to talk about scriptural obedience. You can call it Christian obedience, but I want to be very careful because I shared in the devotional that surrender occurs once, but obedience is walked out daily. And we might have some people who get into semantics and say, Jared, I surrender daily. That's fine.
Yeah.
Right? I think we all can say, well, yeah, we surrender our lives to Christ daily. The idea behind that is surrender occurs once because it's a giving up of oneself, their will and desires, and they're giving it to God. And there was a salvation message based in that too, right? We must surrender to the Lord, but it's like we have to surrender in a very specific way. What we're doing is we're surrendering ourselves, we're confessing our sin, and we're accepting Christ and his perfect works in order to atone for our sins so that we might have a holy and fully restored relationship with God the Father. That's very important. But then the obedience thing, I do think that is walked out daily. Mm-hmm. How about some examples of being obedient on a daily basis? We have kids, right?
Yeah.
What would we love the most from them?
Oh, for them to be obedient, for sure. So
that's a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
So obedience is going to be one. Let's.
Well, it makes life easier anyway. So.
Well, it definitely makes life a lot easier. So a couple things. I'm going to poke back at the teaching that we provided on Monday and talk about what I meant when I said surrender is a moment, obedience is a walk.
Okay.
So I put surrender happens once, obedience happens daily. What good is surrender if we are not obedient on a daily basis?
Well, I would think like if you're not obeying on a daily basis, then there's no growth from that either. So it's one thing to say I surrender, but then without obedience, there's no growth into any spiritual growth, without any obedience at all.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
I mean, that's just kind of what I think of anyways.
Can I provide some real world examples for us to be able to kind of unpack this subject?
Yeah, why don't you do that? And if I could think of some, I will.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, I'm thinking, but like I said, it's...
So back to the lesson, I had mentioned many believers raise the white flag. They start there. They raise it up and they go, fine. I know a lot of people, and I see this in church quite often. What it is you have a person who spiritually surrenders. Mm-hmm. We call that the act of salvation.
Yeah.
When a person decides to make an intentional choice and decision for Christ, what they are doing is they're going to him and saying, I am an enemy, but I am surrendering and I accept the works that you have done. So they raise this white flag, but then they immediately take back control.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Like if you, I guess that's what I was saying by obedience is you will have growth. But if you are doing what you're saying, you take control. Like there's no growth from that because you did the first step, but then there's no follow through.
Yeah. And a real world example of that would be how many people have we seen that have given their lives to Christ and they're walking with him. And then all of a sudden they're right back to their old ways.
Yeah. Well, and
this isn't a message of condemnation either.
Yeah. And I don't even think that it's, when we're talking about your example, I don't even think that there's other situations that happens to us, right? Where you're like, I am starting today. This is what I'm doing. This is the day. I'm going to do this today. And then tomorrow it's like, I don't feel that, right? Like I don't feel the same. Not that you don't feel the same. You're still enthusiastic, but you realize it's kind of work. It's work sometimes, being obedient. Same with, and I say obedient because to me, it's kind of like being disciplined where I guess I should have given a better example, but like working out, let's just say. I think a lot of people are like, I'm excited. I went for a 3-mile run today and I'm pumped. I'm doing it, right? Like I'm fully committed. And then the next day comes around and you're like, my knee kind of hurts. It's kind of cold outside. I don't think I could commit to doing it today. Sometimes these big plans turn into big nothings,
Yeah, I mean, that's like obedience and
discipline
are like synonyms, right?
I feel like they're very similar. Like
they are.
Yeah. So I know we're talking about obedience to God, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of examples for those who don't understand or have not surrendered to God, these examples of even just working out and then not feeling it the next day is kind of, I guess, what I'm getting at with that.
Well, they're very good examples because on one hand, you have this spiritual side, and the other hand, you have this physical side. And when you're doing these comparisons, these compare and contrasting examples, if you were to try to be physically disciplined, you're aiming to be healthier, maybe a certain weight, you're going to eat better, you're going to go to the gym. I've heard it said before with a friend of ours that you can't exercise, you can't out-exercise bad eating habits.
Oh, yeah.
Something to that effect, right? And that makes a lot of sense because you have to be disciplined or you have to be obedient to the plan that has been put forward, or else what are the results going to be? I mean, they're going to be lackluster, right? So you come back to this concept of obedience, scriptural obedience, and I talked about how obedience is a walk. The way I used to explain it to kids that we worked with was it's effective use of your walkie-talkie. If your walk and your talk do not match, then there is a problem, which is why I have a problem with so many people who proclaim the blood of Christ and say, I'm saved. I gave my life to Jesus, Jesus this, Jesus that. And then all of a sudden they just live this contrary life to what the scriptures teach. That's what we're talking about with obedience.
Yeah.
So biblical faith says surrender is decisive. That was one of the key points of the message. And the other one is obedience is consistent. Consistency. That's what you're getting at, right?
That's exactly what I was talking about.
It has to be consistent.
Yeah, definitely.
So some examples in your life of consistency where you found it to be very effective. What are some of those?
Well, for me personally, I think it's been a little bit different since we've been here. But in the past, when I guess for those who know me really well and have known me for years, they know that I like to sleep in. If I can choose to sleep in, that would be what I would do every day if my body allows me to, right? I love sleep. But for years and years and years, I did not have any consistent sleep schedule or time. So I kind of just went to bed whenever I was tired and kind of just woke up whenever, I wanted to. And so once the kids started going to the same school though together and I had to drop them off, right? There's no buses, there's nothing like that. That was when I had to be consistent. And so I remember I started going to the gym, and I had a lot of people tell me like, we're always going to see you here. Like, you're so consistent. Like, you're always here. You just are. And in my head, I'm thinking it was the most consistent I had ever been was going to the gym, usually 5 days a week. But the only reason why I was consistent at the gym is because I consistently had to take the kids to school, right? Like, if they're off during the summer, I'm not going 5 days a week. But while they went to school, I was there consistently 5 days a week. But I guess just having to wake up to take them to school was probably the biggest example for me being consistent in something, because I don't like schedules, and I don't mind planning things. I like to plan things with people, but I don't want to be in charge of that, right? You can plan something. I don't want to plan it. I am not a planner. So I always admire people who are planners, but I'm not. I will just figure out what I'm going to do that day. And if you invite me to something, I'll show up. I'll be there. If I tell you I'm going to go, I will go, but I am not going to plan anything.
Well, there's probably also better results from being consistent.
Yeah.
There's probably less stress.
Yeah.
More peace.
Well, because you know exactly what you're going to do the next day. I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to leave at this time. So I was always ready and on time.
Now, this might not work for the artistic type who just live kind of this laissez-faire lifestyle, right? But what we're talking about is the consistency that you're mentioning is applied in our spiritual lives.
Yeah.
Like, we have to be regimented people. It's very, very important. When I say regimented, I mean we have to be a obedient people in order for us to have these effectual and fruitful lives as Christians.
Well, and really with me, just being consistent and working out, I got way stronger. And I think that's, again, with Christianity, that's the only way that you're going to get stronger in your faith and stronger in just your spiritual growth, and all that is by being consistent. You're not going to be strong by kind of reading your Bible once in a while, or I go to church sometimes, right? But there's no consistency in your life when it comes to God. So
let me ask you a couple of questions, your
Yeah.
opinion. What should we be consistent in?
Me personally, I think it's good to be consistent in reading the Bible.
That's a
Right.
great one.
Yeah, that's one thing. Also, you know, having kids and all that, I think being consistent in going to church. I know you don't necessarily, doesn't mean because you don't have kids you shouldn't go to church, but I think that that's also something that your kids can see that you're consistent in, and and it's expected too.
100% agree.
You know, so if there's ever been a day where it's like, oh, we decided not to go that day for some reason, you know, the kids are like, what's wrong? Why aren't we going? You know, so it's kind of nice that to be consistent in that, because then your kids know what's expected, right? We always go to church on Sunday, or we always go Wednesday, or they know that mom and dad are consistent. And I think another thing is probably just living, like you said, your walk, you know, and your talk, because it's one thing to go to church and it's another thing to like read your Bible. But I think that also when you speak, what does it sound like to others? Does it sound like you're a Christian, or does it sound like you're kind of like everyone else that's around and just acting, you know?
Yeah, and the goal isn't to live a life where we appear to be holy.
No.
It's to live a life that is very fruitful.
Well, and it's not something that you should even have to try, right? Like what I mean by that is, I think we talk about social media and how people say, well, I mean, they live this good life. They're always showing nice cars. They're always showing they have money. They're showing lavish lifestyle. I had no idea they were broke, or that, you know, that's kind of what they show, is just all these good things, right? But I think really, if we are living like true Christians, it shouldn't be something that feels like I'm only going to put out what I think people at church want to see. And I'm only going to put out what the world thinks like a Christian looks like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's just a lifestyle, right? Like I'm not showing off all my stuff and all my talents and all my art. And it's like, you don't even really do all that. Like that's your lifestyle. So if your lifestyle is being a Christian and that's just how you live, right? You're living for God. It shouldn't be anything that's like, well, that's not what they showed on social media. People should be able to come into your house at any time and say, even if there's no camera, even if there's no picture, even if there's no evidence of it, when I talk to that person, that's what I'm getting from them is that's how they are all the time. It's not something for social media.
Yeah.
Because again, that's just a big thing now, because you see people all the time. And I try to explain that to our kids, where just because you see it doesn't mean that's what it is, And as I'm getting older, and now with AI and all the stuff, I'm realizing even more and more and more, where I've seen people that I have online that I've never even met personally, but I'm like, wow, that's a really good picture. And man, every picture she takes is just amazing. And then I'm like, I realize, oh, they're all AI photos, which again, hey, if that's how you want to post, you want to post that. Because for us, it was all filters. And I look back at filters for myself and think, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what half people are thinking, because we all see you in person. You see me in person, and we all know what you look like.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I'm saying though. Like, it's exactly like a filter, right? So when we're talking about that, people shouldn't see us as a filter. They should be able to see that no matter what, if it's a good day, if it's a bad day, that's Cora in general. That's how she is. She's a Christian, and that's how she would act either way. It's not like she's just putting on this filter for everyone to see because it's Sunday and it's Wednesday and it's for Facebook and everyone, oh, she's so amazing.
There's this concept of Christians being better than thou, or goody two shoes.
Yeah.
And I think what you're describing is a very important aspect of being a Christian and exercising your faith in church, which is this. The church is filled with a ton of imperfect people.
Oh, yeah.
This is very important, though. I got to really kind of dig into this one, because I think it is very important. Growing up in the Mormon church was very difficult, because I love Mormons, by the way. I'm going to be very cautious in what I say here, because Mormons are not my enemies.
Yeah.
I'm just describing my experience in the Mormon church. Yeah. And I hope that this is helpful for some people who are listening. But I got to experience the Mormon church. I was raised in the Mormon church. And one of the things that I really struggled with in the Mormon church were appearances and work-based endeavors. They're great people. They have some of the best work ethic, but works are a big component of their faith. And it's very hard. And I personally know friends and family who struggle with this. There is an image issue when it comes to being successful in the church, failure in the church, appearing to have things that nobody else has. Yeah. Some of the most successful business people I know, they are in the Mormon arena because they are smart people. They are ethical. They're work driven. So there's all these qualities to really like about them. But when it comes to the church, I'm going to segue now back to the church.
Yeah.
When it comes to the church, it needs to be known that in the body of Christ, that is the church, in the body of Christ, there are so many broken people.
Yeah.
And that's what the church is. It's a agglomeration of broken people who are trying to figure out how to get right with God. That's the restoration part. The surrendering, that's the first step. Surrendering is really all about looking for redemption. Redemption must occur before restoration. Restoration is the process.
Yeah.
So the things that we're trying to teach our kids, we're talking about the concept of living out our faith. And I think one that was really important, you're talking about within the church. Here's my big encouragement. This is to friends and family. If you feel that you are in a church that doesn't fit for certain reasons, one or another, this concept of obedience doesn't mean blindly do what you're doing. What it means is you're supposed to, as the scriptures say, study to show yourself approved, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You get into the word of God and you see what is different in the church. Now, that could be different denominations. It could be completely different religions. And what we're talking about specifically is I'm a Christian, right? So I subscribe to that, and that is my identity. My identity is Jesus.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this concept of obedience, it is important to question, because this is something that I think is very, I guess it's something that has been a story of you and I in our lives. when it comes to being in an unhealthy church, there's a time and a place to go, is this biblical or unbiblical?
Exactly.
And when it's unbiblical, what's your take on it? What do you think are healthy tips for people who believe that they're in a church that's teaching things that it shouldn't be? By the way, we are not here, I got to say this because it's important. We are not here to attack the Church of Christ. Different churches have different things that they believe in, and we were talking about this this week. I love the foundations class that we went through because we talked about hills that we're willing to die on, the non-negotiables.
Yep.
We're talking about things that are discussion-based, and it's like not everything needs to be a hill that we're going to die on. Now, if it's a theological aspect, right, if we're talking about the divinity of Christ, if we're talking about the formation of the church and eldership, if we're talking about tithing, like there's some certain things that we should die on those hills and certain things that we shouldn't. So going back to challenging whether or not we are in a healthy situation in our faith, it's very important, in my opinion, for us to question what we're in, because you and I went through this experience. We went from a couple of different churches, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the way that God led us to different churches, and we've been to several, the way God led us is it just became a healthier and healthier and healthier experience. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So why do you think that it's important for believers? Now we're talking specifically to believers. Why is it important to really understand what the Bible teaches versus what your church is teaching and bringing those two things together?
Well, I guess when we talk about like the hills that we're willing to die on, and some things, like I feel like there's like levels, right, of what's acceptable and what's not. And a lot of times growing up in church, they tend to put things that are, I would say, on such a low level, and they tend to put those things really high. So it kind of can be kind of discouraging for some people, And like you were saying, kind of like the way that you grew up, it's about like achieving this status, basically.
James calls that works.
Yeah. And I think for me growing up, it's not about achieving a status as far as like how smart you are and how successful are you and all that stuff, but it's more of like how perfect are you, And we love you because you're here and you're doing good. But kind of what I was talking to my friend about, her and I grew up the same church as kids, and we went to the same private school. And I kind of felt really sad with her situation because we grew up the same way, and I think now that there's more happening in her life that is kind of not what the church agrees with, right? Like the church would prefer these things not happen in her life. She's noticed that she's not probably getting treated the same, right? Her eyes have been open to everything that she has learned based on what the church says, not always probably biblical, because there's a lot of things that I believed growing up that I would never stand by, or I think, again, I'm trying to think of the word that you use, but basically it's not at that level, right? We're not talking about just surrendering to God and you're living a good life, but it's like, what are you wearing that day? It's minimal stuff, right? Where it's like, are we really gonna judge people off things that are so minimal? I mean, she's a really good person, but she wears pants.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. She's definitely going to hell.
And we don't need to be ashamed to say that one.
Hey, and if
we might offend a certain crowd that pants are a bad thing and that dresses are supposed to be worn. But this is what you're talking about. We take insignificant things and make them significant.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is where the obedience thing comes in, and you got to tease that out. I mean, I've been in front of my leadership at multiple churches going, and in a very healthy way, saying, hey, I don't think I agree with this. Can we talk it through, and can you explain it? And a healthy church will go, yes, and we'll show you why. Yeah. And if you don't agree with it, then what you need to do is you need to go and align yourself with a church that does. Yeah. And we're not talking about creating a wish list of things you want to see in church. No. That's not going to happen. No. You're in the church, which means it's broken.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's some things that we have seen in the church that are non-biblical. and have
Oh,
brought
I've
it up
seen a
to
lot of them.
a pastor, and in the situation for you and I that we brought it up to the pastor, it wasn't perceived very well, and it wasn't anything biblical. You know what I mean?
That's when I
So,
knew that I was in
Yeah.
a unhealthy church.
Yeah.
And God's not going to call me to a church like that.
Yeah.
Right. And our leadership does have to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the pastorate is such an important, it's such an important field.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of weight to it.
Yeah.
The pastor will be responsible for the flock and the answer for the outcome of the flock. And so when we talk with our leadership about that, it is their job and responsibility to address it. And if they do it in a non-biblical way, it's our job to respond appropriately.
Yeah. And like, I remember growing up, there was one church that in Albuquerque that you couldn't even watch your kid play a sport at their school, because it was a Christian private school, if you weren't wearing a dress. You weren't allowed in there. And I just thought, I get if that's if those are the rules. To me, it seems absolutely ridiculous. But how do you treat people who haven't surrendered yet? How do you treat the outside world who comes in, and like my friend and I were talking about, with tattoos and people who, just don't seem Christian to you,
Yeah.
Like, and like we don't have tattoos, right? Because that's just our conviction to not have tattoos. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm
Too
against,
much work.
Yeah, I'm against them. Like,
And I'm partly Polynesian, so that's really a big part of my culture. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
when I first met him, he said he was going to get a tattoo, some kind of tribal or some kind of Polynesian tattoo. And
well,
go ahead.
God is gracious in that respect. I told Cora this story. I was a pretty rambunctious young man, and when I was young, I think I was about 14, I almost got a tattoo, and
But it wasn't Polynesian, though.
It wasn't Polynesian, and it was not mom approved. And
I don't think it's anybody approved.
And I was very lucky because the people that I were with, it took so long for the tattoo to get completed that there wasn't any time for me.
Yeah.
And this is what I was going to get. And it's totally okay. This is my testimony.
I think most people are going to have to Google it, because
I was going to get
Google it.
on the side of my neck,
Oh, gosh.
up the side of my face, a tattoo that said "No Limit," and with the "No Limit" tank. For those of you who have never heard of that, don't Google it. It was a rap thing, and it would have been the most stupid monstrosity that I would have had all over my body for my entire life. And I'm like, thank God that he prevented that situation.
Well, when I first met you, you were really into like hip hop and I don't even know what you call those things. What was it? Beatboxing, or what is that what you call it?
We call it
Free flowing.
Yeah, free flowing.
Yeah, free flowing. So
digital lyricist.
Yeah, he tried impressing me with that stuff, and oh gosh. And
so
I just thought it was.
It was not
terrible.
impressive.
No, it was not impressive.
We all have hobbies when we're younger, so that's okay.
And you've matured.
I have matured, that's for sure. So I'm very proud of myself.
I'm proud of you too.
More importantly, what I've done is I've followed this prescription of obedience, right? Yeah. There's been times where you and I have debated. You've come to me and you said, I want to get a tattoo, a saying of my grandma's on my arm.
Yeah, I want to get a little thin,
just think about this.
A little thin one right here, yeah.
Now, I will say this. If you got a tattoo, this is one of those very minuscule things when it comes to scriptural issues. Yeah. Like there are churches who will go, if you have a tattoo, you're out. If you wear pants, you're out. And there are these legalistic things that it's like, oh, you got to be careful.
I don't feel like it's like necessarily that for me, like kind of how I grew up was like, if you got your tattoo before you surrendered, then you're okay.
Yeah.
But if you did it after, that's not good, right? Like then you that's not a good thing. But if you're tatted up and then you decide you want to accept God in your heart, then it's okay. You can teach Sunday school.
Yeah, well, there's a whole culture around this. This is what I don't support, right?
And that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah,
but that's
there's this weird culture around,
what I've been talking about
we're Christians, but we're going to do these things. And I think that for me and my comfortability level, I go to a church that's fairly modest.
Yeah.
Because I've tried checking out some of the more modern churches, and they seem to be, the doctrine seems to be watered down. That's going to be my opinion. They tend to be what I'm going to call top of funnel churches. They attract people. People get saved there. People stay years there. Yeah. Growth happens. But there's always this missing level of depth. And then there's this cultural aspect, back to what we're talking about before, of this is what it means to be like assimilated at this church and cool. And I'm like, so for me, I got to be honest, some of the mega churches, and I got really great friends at some of the biggest churches in the U.S., and I'm not knocking them, but I will say those churches definitely don't align with my core convictions, which is why I'm not at them. Now, it doesn't mean that I go and I stab them in the side and let the body of Christ bleed.
Yeah.
That's not my goal.
Yeah.
Because they're for us, right?
Yeah.
We talk about Bar Jesus, LMS, and it's like, no, these people are for us. Do not stop them. They're going to be different. They're going to do things that we don't do. But that's where, as a Christian, I question certain things, which is healthy.
Well, and I think what you're saying about churches earlier, if you're in a healthy church, if you're truly in a healthy church, and these people love you like they love God, right? Why are we putting down people who are now divorced? Why are we putting down
that's such a big one.
people? And that's why I've spoken to several women. I'm not kidding you. In the last month, I don't know, God is just really letting me speak to people that I never thought, would speak to me about these things. And I'm so grateful that they are, because it really makes me hurt for them, because I know these people and I've known them for years, and everything was pretty good until a divorce happened, And I think that's really unfortunate, because I don't think your church family should change because your life changed. There's some things, and
It should be the opposite. They should be surrounding them.
And for these women, their reason for divorce was something more out of their control, and that's why I think even more, so that the church should be there and just building them up.
This goes back to something that I'm having a conversation with somebody who's questioning some of the topics that I'm discussing right now.
Oh, yeah.
And it goes back to, just because it's permissible doesn't mean that it's God's desire. Divorce is actually one of those, right? Yep. The conversation I'm having right now with somebody is regarding slavery. Yeah. And this is one of those topics that, like, as Christians, we could just be like, oh, this is real difficult. I'm just not going to address it. Yeah. And from a hermeneutical perspective, I have to address the entirety of the text. And I'm like, I wish I could cherry pick like all the naysayers do. They're just like, I'm going to take this verse and this verse. And then we go to that concept of divorce. And it's like, listen, this isn't, marriage is a real institution. It's not God's desire that we break that, but there's legitimate reasons for doing so. Yeah. For Jesus talked about issuing a divorce decree. There's rational reasons, but it happens in the church. But sometimes the church doesn't, the people in the church don't react the way that they should react.
Well, not recently, because I haven't known anyone in my church, or in the last couple churches that we've actually attended that have gotten divorced, and so I don't really know. But in the past, I know that there are a lot of women that I've spoken to that have said, hey, when I got divorced, things changed. The people around me changed. People treated me different. Even, and not just the church, but their friends treated them different because their friends weren't divorced. Now that you're divorced, you're not someone I want to hang out with, Yeah.
I'm going to flip this and go to the opposite side, because then, and this is the positive side of it. My experience right now in the church that I'm in is I'm in such a healthy church.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And I love the passion of the leadership, and I love the sincerity. And I'm like, this is what a healthy church looks like. And for me, a healthy church is one that is obviously teaching what it should be teaching. Yeah. I'm big on expository preaching, so that's happening. I'm big on missions, that's happening. We got this awesome vision that they put out, and so there's all these things that we're like, hey, we can gravitate towards some of these. Reaching immigrant groups is an option. Evangelism. I'm thinking digital evangelism is one.
Well, and in a lot of churches too, like I've spoken with a lot of people, and they're like, the churches are dying. People just don't want to go to church anymore. They just don't care for church anymore. But these churches, I feel like that we, the last church we went to, and then now in a different state, this church, there's so much growth. There's so much people. Just 2 Sundays ago, we became members of this church, right? We went through all the classes and all that. And, we've been here at Sioux Falls this month. It's actually going to be a whole year that we've been here, but now we're members of the church. But they brought or they had 16.
Yeah, it was 16 people.
And that's not including the kids. That's just the adults that became members. And I feel like what does it mean when there's no growth? Like, what does the church mean when there is no growth? Is it all churches are not growing? Nobody wants to do anything for God anymore?
Look in Revelation. You'll see what happens with the 7 churches.
Yeah.
There are some that are thriving and some that are dying.
Yeah. And
it's a sign
that's the unfortunate part is I've seen a lot that I've been to in the past that I grew up as a kid and just have more in my younger years that they are dead. They're completely dead. Or if they're not dead, they're all fighting with each other. And that's the thing that I don't think that a lot of these Christian pastors that I grew up listening to and underneath their word, right? The word of God, but underneath them, that as kids and becoming a teenager and becoming young adult and now, 40 years old, that we see all that. We see you guys fighting. As churches, you guys can't even get along. And I find it really interesting now as I look back at it, that it's like the one thing that we all have in common. I mean, we have all the same thing in common, right? We all believe in God and have accepted him in these churches, but we don't want to talk to each other. This church doesn't talk to that church. And
red flag.
It is terrible. Like, I can't even tell you how many of the churches that I've gone to as a kid and that I know that they don't even like each other. None of them do.
I'm gonna help our listeners understand these churches and why the division is within these churches, and it's because they are legalistic.
Exactly.
They take the minuscule things and they make them maximums, and they bicker over the small things. And it's things like this. I'm gonna say it. I grew up reading the KJV in the Mormon Church. The KJV was very. It was very. What's the word for it? Familiar.
Yeah,
it was very familiar
standard,
for me. And so when I ended up getting saved, I moved into the independent fundamentalist movement. And that was very similar to Mormonism. It was like a nice little translation right into it. But here's what I'm trying to say. When it comes to the scriptures and the different versions that are available, this is going to be an argument of, well, did the translation come from the Textus Receptus, or did it come from Codex Sinaitica? Or you're using the right version or the wrong version? Listen, guys, I've done quite a bit of research, and I made this joke with Cora last night. Nobody has ever been saved through the ESV. Nobody. Or the NIV. And it's like, come on, let's not be preposterous here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good translations out there. And when there's a church who elevates one translation above the other, and I'm not talking about illegitimate translations.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There are some out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do not read that one.
And that's what my friend and I were talking about, because I've always known her as, like you're saying, the King James Version only. Like, I've known that, excuse me, I've known that about her.
Yeah.
And she thought that of me too, right? That was like the standard growing up. And that was the only way. Like, there's no other way. That's it, and if you do anything else, you're not a good person, or you're backsliding, whatever you want to call it, And so when she kind of mentioned that,
yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah, because again, I have not said anything to her. I just really reached out to her to see how things are going, and she mentioned that. I just thought it's just, and this is the thing she said too. And this is what I believe. This is what you're talking about. There are some really good versions out there. There are some that you can kind of understand and you can read, and there are some that are garbage. And that's exactly what she said as well. It's not just because you could read anyone and it's just going to be fantastic. There's little things that are switched up but my thing is, I don't have anything wrong. I don't have anything against the King James Version. That's still my preference when it comes to when I read things myself. But there's some things that I'm like, I just don't quite understand that. So that's what I love about a lot of these Bible apps is I can read one version and then hit a button and that makes me understand it a little bit more. And it's not like, well, they completely changed everything. It's just that sometimes for some people, and myself included, because there's a lot of things that I personally do not understand. So just to kind of read it in a different version has helped me tremendously. And also to know that that's not our main focus, right? Like we want to be able to learn, but if you're not quite reading exactly what we're reading, it's just terrible. Like I'm trying to explain it. Again, you said at the beginning where it's not a level thing, right? Like
one's better than the other.
Yeah, I think it's preference. And if your preference is the King James, great. If your preference is the ESV, great. You know, as a family, we've all kind of taken on the ESV, but I have a King James Version Bible. I don't even own a personal ESV Bible that I could take around with me, and it's like a regular Bible. I have a study Bible, but...
So, like, for the most part, when we're talking different versions of the Bible, you're going to have different versions that are going to be thought for thought.
Yeah.
Other ones are going to be word for word. You're going to have the closest translation that you can get. I mean, if you really want to know what the scriptures say without those translations into English, you can go back and read the Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic manuscripts. I mean, have at it. That's up to you if you want to do that. But it comes down to this. We are still translating the Bible into multiple languages, and I think that the Bible app has done an amazing job of this. And it's like these people are still getting saved under different versions.
Yeah.
And for me, the reason why I think, like, I go back to my comfort and all of my memory verses are actually in the KJV version. But so that's my comfort version.
Yeah.
But when it comes to my modern day, easily interpretable version, especially when I'm dealing with my kids, I go to the ESV.
What you're talking about, interpret, right? Like, so I remember my friend who I worked with in New Mexico. She's deaf. She was born deaf. She has a cochlear implant. But a lady came in one time and she was talking about wanting to learn sign language. And I'm talking to my friend and this lady at the same time. And I said, you know, the interesting thing about sign language is you're not giving people every single word. The deaf people, you're kind of breaking it down so that they understand. There's a lot of words that are not in sign language.
Yeah.
There's words that don't really exist. And if you were to say them, they wouldn't even know what that means, right? If we're reading things word for word, what does that mean? So we kind of have to change it a little bit, but just so that it's understandable, right? It's kind of like when you're talking to kids, you can use all these big words and they just look at you like, what are you talking about? Oh, okay. Let's change the word a little bit to make it a little bit more understandable for this kid or for a deaf person. And even my friend said, she goes, I didn't even realize that. My friend who's deaf, like I didn't realize that, you know, so much you do have to change words so much. You're not saying a full sentence like you and I speaking English to each other. We're breaking it down because we can say all these words to each other. And if you're signing it to someone, it's too many words. You can cut it down for me and I could still understand exactly what you're saying without you saying all these tiny little words in between or having to figure out what some of these words mean. I can tell you what it means without giving you this big word that you don't understand.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I think of. You're not going to get word for word. I mean, you could, if you're deaf, you can read it and you're going to get word for word. But if I'm translating it to you, you're not getting every single word.
I'll be pretty honest with you. When I got saved, I was unwilling to surrender. Like, God did all the surrendering.
Yeah.
I shared my testimony with the elders when we were going through that process of membership.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, for me, my day of salvation was just an ordinary day, and I was listening to a bilingual message going in and out, in and out. And the pastor said, does anybody need to give their life to Christ? Does anybody need to get saved? And it was like a prick of the heart, just like the Bible describes. And something happened to me. There was this emotional transformation that never should have occurred. And Paul, you see this in Paul's life on the road to Damascus. I could have got saved off of a Subway napkin.
Oh, some people, it's a track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some people, they never read the Bible. They just, different things.
Some people get
countries.
saved. Yeah, some people get saved just because God pricks their heart.
Exactly.
It just happened. Yeah. I wasn't reading this Bible. I wasn't reading a Bible when I got saved. Yeah. What happened is the Holy Spirit came down and worked a miracle in my life. Yeah. And we see this all the time. So this is where I'm talking about. We take the minuscule things and we make them maximums, or we make them hills to die on.
Yeah.
like the encouragement for the audience that I'm really trying to drive is this concept of obedience is so important.
Yeah.
It's important for our growth and it's important for our edification. But this life is supposed to be fun, and it's not supposed to be like legalistic. And when we talk about living the Christian life, it is not a boring life.
Yeah. Well,
it's a great life.
And same with like you're saying legalism, and with church and kind of what their standards are. There's some that, again, their standards are just a little crazy, you know. We're going to talk about what you're able to wear, right? If you want to join our church, this is what you have to wear. But then your lifestyle could be something that the church doesn't agree with, but we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to get into that. As long as you're wearing a dress on Sunday, that's kind of all that matters. And that's the part that for me,
or a suit and a white shirt.
Yeah,
you know, I've been through that.
Had to, yeah. That it's like, yeah, how do you look? It's not about how are you living, right? I didn't even think about that. But yeah,
I haven't shared how many times I've been, in my opinion, humiliated by showing up to church without the right clothes.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And that was a very embarrassing experience. It happened numerous times.
Yeah.
Me and my brother showing up without the quote unquote proper attire.
Yeah. And it's the same thing too. Cause one of my friends that I spoke to, it was similar on her. So this is a different friend, a different denomination completely. And it was about what she wears underneath, it was Mormon. And is it right for her or not right for her? You know what I mean? Like, is she still able to, or should she not, or should she? And that's the conviction that she has right now that she's dealing with is it right for me to do this? Or is it wrong? Like, what am I?
Or is it legalism?
Yeah. Or what? Yeah, exactly.
Is it even scriptural?
Yeah. What am I supposed to be doing? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And I'm conflicted. And this is the part that I tried to get to her is, are you doing it for your parents? Or are you doing it for God? That's the thing growing up in a Christian household is a lot of times you do things and it's not because you're doing it for God, but you're going to make your parents look bad. You're going to make the church look bad. And it's not that your parents are the ones that are kind of digging that into you, but you kind of already know the standard, right?
Yeah.
If people don't approve of you wearing pants to church, like I can't imagine if you kissed a boy before you got married or held his hand or anything else. You know what I mean? That's just...
Well, these are all just fabricated standards.
Yeah. I mean, and God does have standards, but like
He
you
does.
said, is it biblical? What you're doing, is it biblical? Or is it just kind of a church set standard? And that's what my friend who, again, I grew up with in the same church kind of came to the realization that, wow, like, and I'm going to use the word she used. We've been lied to.
Yeah.
And that really, really, really spoke to me because I think that's basically what happened to me. When I kind of snapped out of it, I realized, wow, like it was pretty crazy. Like I didn't realize that some of it was that crazy.
There's an act though where God is drawing you to that truth. Mm-hmm. That's what we have to be grateful for though. Yeah. That's what I was talking about in this aspect of God's going to draw us to the truth, regardless of it, if it's on a napkin, if it's in the word. I'm very grateful though that God does that. He intervenes in our life. He provides clarity and conviction. And that's why I'm encouraging this concept of obedience. That's so important. And you want to make sure you balance that with truth, because obedience with the wrong thing can be very, very bad.
Yeah.
Obedience with the right thing can be very, very bad.
Yeah.
We use the example of working out or kids listening or nutrition being right or reading the Bible and ensuring that there's not, some supplemental thing that contradicts the Bible.
Yeah. Well, and
all
just
super important.
And just kind of like what you're saying is we've seen people even in the whole working out thing, right? Where it's like, yeah, go, you got this. But then all of a sudden you're like, oh, whoa, you're doing too much now, and not that they're doing too much, but they're going extreme, right? And that's what happens sometimes in Christianity where it's like, yay, this person got saved and they're doing good. And then somehow they're telling people all this stuff that's not biblical because that's what they're being told. And you're like, now you're doing too much, It's like that you have 3% of body fat, like that's not healthy, you look like you look good and you're only eating 500 calories a day, but that's not sustainable. Same with being extreme with people where it's like, I understand you love the Lord and Jesus saves, but you're in that extreme, like you're at 3% body fat, man.
I had such a problem when I first got saved, years into being saved, where I really had this fervent desire to teach.
Yeah.
And I was very prideful. I was reflecting on this last night. I wouldn't listen to godly men who had been giving me good, godly leadership. And I just remember thinking, I know so much. I teach better than you. I can do it 10 times better. And I look back and I remember one of the first Bible studies that I had hosted, nobody showed up but one person. And the pastor was like, well, what are you teaching? And, you know, is it Mormonism? And I'm like, come on now, right?
Yeah.
But because of my background, obviously. And I was like, no, pastor, I mean, I'm more on I'm more on the plane of, you know, the doctrine, the doctrinal statement that the church had believed in. By the way, if you want to know what the church believes in, look for their doctrinal statement. And so what was really funny about that is I look back and I'm like, I was totally unqualified to teach. And I was so prideful, just so prideful. And I wouldn't listen to people. And there was times where I was very aggressive and times where I wasn't godly in it. And I'm like, man, I look back and I'm like, I was just a young buck acting like an idiot.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of people do that too.
Oh, for sure.
Where, you know, it ends up being a little bit annoying because you're like, yeah, I understand, but you're kind of taking this to a whole another level, you know. And again,
to the extremes.
God doesn't call the what you said the word earlier, now I forgot. He doesn't call because you said you didn't know everything, right? God doesn't call the people that know everything.
It's that concept of he doesn't call the prepared, he prepares the called, or something like that.
So you can still teach and learn, right? That's the whole part of teaching is you're learning at the same time. But he doesn't just call the people who know everything. He does call those that need to learn and that are learning. So you are going to make mistakes along the way. He's not going to call just the perfect people to come and talk and
teaching
teach
is very specific, and that goes back to the qualifications of pastors and bishops and elders, because the Bible says we shouldn't approach it with pride lest we fall into the temptations of the devil.
But that's kind of what I've talked to you about too, though. You're saying about not being qualified as far as what you're teaching. I've gone to churches where the people are not qualified even based on their actions, right?
Oh, that's a different one.
I have
credentials, but bad actions.
Oh man, where I'm like, why would you let that guy teach? Like he talks to young girls all the time, you know, or he's such a weirdo. And that's the thing that I know for sure in church that I've seen a lot of, and not just our church. I mean, I'm not in our church now, but I'm saying like in past churches where I'm like, that guy definitely should not be teaching.
It's people. A big topic right now because that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about intelligent and godly obedience, where we're supposed to question this kind of stuff, and we're supposed to use our intuition, and we're supposed to use our knowledge and go, this doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a big topic right now, specifically in the Baptist circle. There was a conference probably about 3 years ago where they were really addressing this issue. And if you remember, Pastor Chris came back from that conference and he was like, we're gonna talk about this because nobody wants to talk about it. And the topic was of sexual abuse in the church. And it was like, listen, these are supposed to be the rules. These are the things that protect us. We're supposed to protect victims. You see it kind of the opposite way in some churches. And that's what we're talking about today, that we're trying to, the attempt today is to encourage this healthy obedience and for the believer to be in this fruitful relationship within their church. And it's not to marginalize or attack the church, but it's to demonstrate the churches that are not acting according to the scriptures, and they're taking things that are minuscule and making them legalistic.
Yeah, well, like you were just talking about having to give your statement to the church, right? We just recently joined.
Yeah.
And for myself, I had to do the same thing. But when I did it, there was a woman in the room. So there was 2 men, and then there was a woman. And as soon as we're done, they told her, you can leave. Right? I mean, we all left, right? But her job was to be there while I was there, because that's just good practice,
good
right?
Accountability.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, I just think that that's how it should be in church. You should make sure that everyone is protected, not just those from abuse, but like,
it prevents all of the It prevents giving the devil space to manipulate those situations, right? And what you're doing is you're protecting yourself and you're protecting the individual. But the healthy churches I've been in, the accountability is like nil. It's like the pastor has nobody to respond to. I'm absolutely in favor of elderships. They are such a healthy mechanism in the church to promote growth and accountability.
Well, we were even just talking about the other day about one of the churches that we went to, that one of the associate pastors had an affair, and they still, and at the end of it, again, kind of forgave him, right?
Well, they go through this restoration process, but some churches, they look at that, and what they do is they minimize the situation, and then they demonize the other person that it would have happened with.
Well,
and I've seen that in churches. I'm like, wow, what a bad response.
Well, and that's what the unfortunate part was, right? So it's okay. You can forgive this person, and I don't know, maybe they're going to step down from their position, right? They're not going to be.
If you're unqualified,
they're not going to be a pastor anymore. Like if you want to just be at the church, if it's a grown woman, it's an affair. But I think that in this case, the woman was the one who had to leave the church and who was not allowed back and all that. And I just didn't think that was
that's
fair.
a mishandling for sure.
Yeah.
And this is really a small fraction of.
Yeah.
The flip side is this is a small fraction of what occurs in the church.
Yeah.
The church, I'll go where I started. The church is an agglomeration of broken people.
Yeah.
And it is imperfect, and we are not claiming it as perfect. And that is what you will find in a good, healthy church.
Yeah.
You'll be able to commune and have community with people who go, I'm doing life and I'm not perfect. And if it looks the other way, you might be in a cult. So just letting you know, right? I've been in a lot of cults before. I'm not going to lie. Not like legitimate cults like the Kool-Aid drinkers, right?
Yeah. And like you're saying, like the healthy church, if your church also sees that you're struggling or you're backsliding, they are going to pull you aside and talk to you and discuss it with you.
That's absolutely biblical too.
Yeah. So if they don't, then it's not a healthy church.
That is unbiblical. Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I don't think like we're necessarily trying to put down any churches, but also just really trying to state what is a healthy church and what is an unhealthy church.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have these rules that are not biblical, make sure you keep them for everybody. There shouldn't be exceptions. I've seen some exceptions where I'm like, I thought you had to wear a dress all the time, and that lady's not wearing a dress right now, and she's doing the ministry, which again, I don't care about dresses. I don't care if you want to wear them or you don't. If you want to wear them forever, that's great. That's totally on you. But why is there exceptions for certain people if those are your rules?
Yeah, we got to make sure that the rules are legitimate. We understand them. Mm-hmm. This was a really healthy conversation. Yeah. We're out of time today, but I think these are the kind of things that our audience needs to listen to. There are events that are happening, significant events, in my opinion, to those who we are encountering, those who we love, those who we are related to. And it's very important to bring this stuff to the surface. We have to talk about it. What I would say is Christ loves the church. He died for the church. Not every church is thriving. Not every church has a godly leadership. Many churches have godly leaderships. Many churches are thriving. You have to be part of one as an act of obedience. Yeah. It is very, very important. The message this week was all about, first and foremost, coming from last week, you're supposed to surrender. Too many people are unwilling to raise the white flag and surrender to God. But once you do that, your act of worship is to walk out daily in an obedient manner. But we're talking about a scriptural obedience, not necessarily a blind obedience. Mm-hmm. And as part of that, I think it's very important to ask a couple questions. What I'm going to try to do is put these lessons up onto our website. I think that would be helpful because I have all of it prepared and ready to go because we are not able. So if you're listening to this, we are not able to cover everything that we intended on covering, but this was a very healthy conversation. So for our audience, I want to share a couple of things that will provide a opportunity for reflection. I want you to think of these and ruminate on them until we meet next time. Where have I surrendered emotionally but not obediently? Mm-hmm. Where am I praying for clarity instead of walking in faith? And what instructions from God am I delaying? I think these are just a few things to think about. They're not all inclusive. I don't have the list that God has where I can touch everybody's mind and answer the questions that they have, but I think these are a few things that we can really understand. Mm-hmm. I'm going to end with this. Psalm 37:5 says, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will act. Mm. The white flag is raised once, trust is walked out daily. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We aim to help others live a dedicated, devoted life to Jesus Christ. If you haven't already surrendered, will you do that today? And once you do that, you need to walk out your life in obedience to Jesus Christ. Many people do not want to make that decision. Please make that decision. You can take a look at our page on YouTube. It's Dedicated Devoted. Please drop a positive comment in there. We'd love to be able to engage in dialogue. We really appreciate the time. Thank you, and God bless. Until we see you next time.